of the Corporate Joint Committee. Can I just do a quick reminder that you remain on mute unless you are called in to speak, and obviously if you've got mobile phones, if they can remain on silent, and if you wish to enter the debate or wish to speak, obviously raise your electronic hand if you can. Okay, we'll move then to just a couple of amendments in terms of announcements for today. So I know Karen Jones cannot join us today from Neath Talbot Council, so Nicola Pearce is standing in. And again, we have Mike Shaw joining us in lieu of the legal officer. So Mike, welcome. So thank you both. Are there any other additionality in terms of changes of representation for today?
I believe not, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We'll move then to item 2, which is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations that anybody needs to make on items on the agenda today? I can't see any hands going up.
No indication, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we've got 2 sets of minutes to agree. The first are from the 24th of October 2023. So I'm happy to move these as a true record. Could I ask for a seconder, please? Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, Di Clements, Di, if you want to, was there something you wish to raise?
Good morning. Well, yes, I just wanted to raise that, in fact, I am the chair of Pembroke Education National Park, not an officer. So if that could be corrected, please. Thank you.
Absolutely. So we'll get that amended. Thank you, Di. Okay. Other than that, are there any other corrections or amendments to the minutes? If not, could I ask all those in favour to show, please? Thank you very much. That's carried. We'll move on then to minutes of the 5th of December 2023. And again, happy to move these as a true record. Could I ask for a seconder again? Thank you, David. And again, are there any amendments or corrections to the minutes? If not, again, could we show in favour of those if they're a true record, please? Thank you very much. Those are carried and agreed. Okay, we'll move on then to the forward work programme. This is for noting, but again, call in officers in terms of any further updates to the work programme that they'd like to advise on. None? Okay. We'll move then to our first full item, which is the Western Gateway representation. Will, I'll call you in to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. This is, I hope, relatively straightforward, as we've all got a good background in the Western Gateway, but just to summarise the position, Western Gateway, as we're all aware, is a cross-regional partnership of local government businesses and academia across Western England and South Wales, really with the purpose of driving forward the economy, creating opportunities and growth, particularly in skills and industry and net zero and a greener energy agenda. In 2019, Swansea, as a member of the Western Gateway, but the other 3 authorities in the CJC concluded that they wouldn't join the Western Gateway at that stage. And since then, with the development, I think, of particularly the energy and the economic agenda across South West Wales, the formation of the CJC, securing the Celtic Freeport bid between Port Talbot and Pembrokeshire, there was a sense with the other 3 members of the CJC that they would wish to be in that partnership. Each of those 3 local authorities wrote to the Western Gateway, opening up discussions as to whether now was a good opportunity to join. The Western Gateway have responded and concluded, for a number of reasons, and which are touched on in the paper, that they would welcome wider involvement from the Swansea Bay City Dale and the CJC region of those local authorities, but largely, I think, revolving around the challenges of widening governance and a very, very large board. They would welcome a representative from the CJC to represent those 3 other authorities, and would welcome the approach that they've adopted in the Cardiff region, which is to maintain Swansea with a seat on the board and have a CJC representative on the board. So that's laid down in the report, and it's really now to consider the options available, one of which is to maintain the status quo, the other really to accept the additional seat and take that up as a CJC representative on the board. And if that was the option which members would choose to support, then we would recommend a rotational taking up of that appointment, and that's laid down in the report under the recommendation, starting with Carmarthenshire. Back to you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Will. And just for the board's awareness, essentially, we've had a number of discussions on this over many months. I think certainly all leaders now see the value of participating in the Western Gateway. As Will alluded to, Swansea's seat on the Western Gateway is an historical one, as we were one of the original members, but very keen to make sure that we get greater representation for the region by adding and taking the opportunity to hold a second seat. And as Will said, the option 2 there is, I think, the favoured option that we would like to pursue. And as Will said, that would begin with Carmarthenshire taking the representational seat in the first year. So again, open it up for comments from others. Yeah, sorry, Will, come back to you.
Sorry, just to clarify, Chair, I think option 1, I'm just checking I've got that right, agree the additional seat as a CJC seat on the board. It's just to clarify, option 1, I think, was the recommended option.
Yeah, thank you, Will.
Thanks.
Okay, David. You're on mute there, David. Sorry.
How many times we hear that one? I say we are where we are. I do appreciate the Swansea Bay's seat is historic, and I fully appreciate the situation that you want to retain your seat. And I think if you go back over the years, Pembrokeshire, because of the development down at the port and the energy kingdom, we were always keen to actually go on board with it, but we were landlocked because Carmarthenshire didn't feel it was worthwhile for their reasons. I fully appreciate. So I think it's a good thing now that we are joining forces. I appreciate that we've got another seat on the board, so we've got 2 bites of the cherry, if you like, when it comes to a vote. But I fully support now option 1 as outlined by Will, and would like to propose the recommendation of it. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, David. Darren, next, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And apologies, first of all, I've had some difficulty in joining this morning. That's why I'm on my iPad. But in terms of this particular agenda item, I'm happy to support the option as set out by Will in the introduction. I think we all recognise that it's not optimal to have this sort of 2-tiered representation, but obviously those are discussions we've had previously, and the fact that we will have representation now from next year onwards will give us a chance to feed into that governance review, which we're obviously aware of in the background. So the sooner that can kick off, really the better. From my point of view, I think it's important we have that discussion to have that consistency and fairness really in terms of representation across the whole region. But having a seat at the table will obviously enable us to feed into that process. So that's something I welcome, but happy to support the recommendation as set out this morning. Diolch.
Great, thank you, Darren. And Steve.
Thank you, Rob. I wasn't going to say anything, but being as David and Darren have mentioned it, I think it's quite an important way forward for the reasons they've both outlined. So just to put on record, I'm also supporting the recommendation this morning. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. And look, I think, given specifically the recent decision to remove blast furnace capability from Talbot in the Tata Steelworks, being part of that Southwestern Wales response to the Northern Powerhouse, which is what the Western Gateway is. It's bringing together communities now from Pembrokeshire right through to Swindon to have an economic mass which is capable of, making sure that we get a fair share of UK government attention and finance. And I think that is one of the potential benefits of us now having the whole region in the city, in the Western Gateway, and obviously making sure that we've got two voices on that board in direct conversation with UK government around investment, because it is going to be a huge challenge for all of us to try and offset some of the potential impacts now that we'll see if the plans that have been announced for Tata go ahead. And obviously that is important that we take the opportunity now, if we pursue option one, to maximise the benefits of being part of the Western Gateway. Okay, so that's been moved. Could I ask for a formal seconder, please? Thank you, David.
I moved it, sorry. I moved it.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, David. I'll formally second then. Thank you. And I will go to the vote then. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That is carried. Okay, we'll move on to item 6, which is the third quarter financial monitoring report. Chris Moore.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as you say, this is the third quarter monitoring. It actually indicates really where we are with this year, and as to be expected, that there is some slight underspend. The one positive is, you will notice within here, or one of the positives I should say, is that we have had confirmation from Welsh Government regarding the transport grant to support the regional transport plan. We had confirmation of 125,000 for current year. Came a bit late in the year really for the officers, but I know they're dealing with that. And there was a further commitment of 100,000 next year, so that's a real positive going forward. There is it's racking up a bit of commitment really from the work streams in terms of financial commitment, I should say, and there is an indication that there is spend taking place there now in respect of the funding there, and obviously all the other costs are running through. But it does leave us with a net expenditure below our original plan of 388,000, which is sorry, 398. The print is a bit small here, but which is slightly below 200,000 below the expected. So that has actually meant that we will have a contribution back into reserves at the end of the year, but it's all on the right side, and as we've spoken before, it's part of a longer term plan as to how we implement over a period of time. So happy to take any questions, Chair, but as I say, it's a monitoring report of the third quarter.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Yeah, and I'll on your behalf move that report. Could I ask for a seconder, please? Thank you very much. Steve, I thought I saw your hand up. Was that a legacy hand, or did you want to come in on this item?
Oh, Robert, is it still up? I can't see it up with
no,
me.
it's gone back down now, so
No.
you're fine.
Right. No, that's all right. No, I don't want to come in. Thank you.
Okay, great. Are there any other contributions or comments or questions for Chris on the monitoring report? If not, then again, could I ask members to show if they're in favour of the report, please? Thank you very much. That is carried. Okay, we'll move now to item 7, which is the Corporate Joint Committee budget for 24-25. Chris, before I bring you in, I know we've had a letter from the scrutiny panel. Apologies to members, I thought it had gone to everybody, but I'll ensure that it is circulated after the meeting. But I thought important that we do hear the response back from scrutiny prior to Chris introducing the report. So if I can invite Councillor Russell Sparks to just give us an overview of scrutiny's response. Russell, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, we did have this item on our agenda in the meeting, and it did lead to some heated discussion. I think we recognised the pressures that each of the member authorities are under, but really what members wanted to express was the contradiction in terms of, if we go for a minimum budget again, then we still have all the costs of running the CJC, all of the accounting function and the democratic services function, but we don't get very much back from it because we're not trying to do very much at the moment. And that's what members were were expressing when they were talking about the build-up of the reserves. Also, members were curious about the different options that were presented in terms of there was an option for a 10% reduction, but off or do nothing, or actually could do everything, kind of all you can eat budget where you could do everything that the CJC is supposed to do. And it was just felt maybe there should have been other options laid out in that. But for me, the core thing was, and I reminded members that we've had this discussion previously, and we've communicated previously with the CJC that Welsh Government have to provide funding for the CJC in order for it to do its functions. All of the authorities are under pressure in terms of their local government budgets, and it's frustrating to the scrutiny committee that the CJC is not able to function without that funding coming through to support the work that's been expected of it. So that, hopefully that's a summary, Chair, before people get to see the letter. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak.
No problem at all. Thank you, Russell, and please thank the scrutiny panel for the work that they've done on this and for their letter. We'll obviously consider the points that you've raised formally and make sure that we give a formal response back to the scrutiny panel in due course. But I think just in terms of initial responses from myself, just to confirm, I think what the letter lays out and what you've said today reflects many of the discussions I think that leaders have had, and it is in line with our views as well, which is we anticipate and we expect Welsh Government to help with the funding of the things that they're asking the Corporate Joint Committee to do. And, you know, we went into discussions with the Welsh Government around corporate joint committees on the basis that they would provide no additional costs or burdens to local authorities, that they would be light touch, and where there were extra things that we were being asked to do, they would be properly funded. So I think that position hasn't changed from any of us. We'll continue to lobby from that. Obviously, we've recently, as Chris mentioned, had some funding for the transport plan, but that again is a starter part of funding. We will need more. We will need more if we're to do more on strategic planning, and we're certainly going to need more if we're going to deliver on the broader transport options. So again, whilst we've I guess termed the option as do minimum, it's not actually not doing the work that needs to be done, but it's doing what we can do with the budget available. I guess that's the point. So if we'd have said we're going to do this, then we would have inevitably been questioned because the resources are not there to do it currently. So I guess perhaps we'll work on the language, perhaps in terms of the options a bit, because actually it's not about not doing anything. It's about taking stuff forward, but within the resources we have. And I think perhaps we can probably describe that a bit better going forward. But thank you for the feedback. And yes, it's in line with our views as well. And we will continue to lobby Welsh Government for the appropriate resources to do the job we're being asked to do.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay. Does anybody else want to come in and respond? Darren?
Yeah, just to pick up on the points you made there, Rob, and I agree with what Russell has presented. As you say, we've had those discussions at joint committee level, haven't we, in terms of the importance of that additional funding to support our work. And I think there is a point around the language here, because as I see it, it's a continuity budget, not a do minimum. And in terms of the asks that Welsh Government have of us, we are on track in terms of the transport plan, for example. You know, we've submitted our outline plan, and of course we're meeting again next month to finalise that vision. So we are making progress, but as I say, it's about the pace of that change. But I mean, the paper sets out quite clearly, and it's quite stark really, in terms of what the full cost operational budget impact would be for us as local councils. And you know, it states there we'd need £1.4 million extra, you know, to do that. And I think that the point that Russell has made in terms of the pressures on us as local authorities currently looking at our budgets is, you know, is serious. It's really challenging. I don't think that any one of us could justify putting an extra 1.4 million into this pot when we've got schools and frontline services that are having to take cuts. That's the stark reality of the financial situation that we face. And so, you know, if Welsh Government have expectations of CJCs and they want targets to be met, I'm afraid that they will have to stamp up a little more cash to deliver that in a timely fashion. That's just the reality of the situation. So grateful for the feedback from the scrutiny committee, and I'm more than happy to formally propose the recommendation this morning. Yeah, diolch.
Thank you, Darren. Aled, next.
Yeah, just a quick thank you to Russell and to you as well, Rob, and to Darren for those comments. I note, obviously, from a national park point of view of the requirements of local authorities and what is expected here. I'm sure you'd want me to say that if we have to have a meaningful engagement with the CJCs, although we are not mentioned within the levy, I think we should be aware that we are also having a shrinking capacity, like all of us here. And I think meeting those obligations is going to be a challenge for us in the national parks, and particularly in our case, because we have 3 CJCs to relate to. So I'm really reflecting on how we can meet those expectations and have a meaningful engagement, but we are pleased to do so. And I think I'm very grateful to Russell for the comments, and to you, Rob, for the steer that you've given in terms of contacting Welsh Government on this one. But there are resource implications for us, although we're not in the levy. Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, thank you, Aled. Absolutely right. Okay, we'll now revert back to the report then, and I invite Chris to introduce the report proper, and Darren, then I'll come back to you to move it formally.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Thank you for that feedback from Scrutiny. I apologise to Scrutiny, actually, as Russell's on the line, that actually I wasn't able to attend myself last week. So Stephen attended instead, but I probably could have put more meat on the bone if I'd been there. Unfortunately, I wasn't. So just going back to the report, the report, as has been mentioned, does set out a number of options. CJC under the legislation is required to set the budget by the 31st of January, and hence why we are here now, and we need to notify the 4 constituent authorities of the levy by that date of the 31st of January. So this really leaves actually consideration today of the various options, and the levy will be actually allocated on a population basis as per the legislation as well. As has been commented, there are a number of options on the table here in terms of the funding positions. There has been some discussion over a period of time around the options, and whilst actually coming back to the terminology, I think last year we referred to the budget as a do minimum budget. This year we have actually we are referring to it now because we are in the middle of the throes of actually developing the CJC as a continuity budget. So the options on the table are a continuity budget or actually an optimal budget. Now, obviously, the optimal budget is, as Darren has mentioned, significantly more. It would run up to about £2 million, and that is probably very challenging, if not unsustainable, with the position of where the public sector funding is at the moment and local authorities funding. So the sort of proposal on the table is to continue with the continuity budget, bearing in mind that there will be additional expenditure going in because we have had confirmation of the regional transport grant, which I mentioned in the last report was 125,000 last year. It's 100,000 coming into next year. So there's over 200,000 actually additional funds going into the transport work stream. The other work streams, they have detailed within the report what can be delivered, both under the optimal but also under the continuity, and there's substantial work that will develop in the 4 work streams, which are all mentioned within the report itself, and there's some detailed appraisal as to what will be delivered there. So the recommendation really on the table, which actually allows for a reasonable amount of funding to those individual work streams, in total with 100,000 from the regional transport plan. There's 320,000 to be expended on those individual work streams. It also then covers off the governance and the accountability, etc., across the board, that which is the Appendix B. So Appendix A and Appendix B is exactly the same in terms of delivery. The only difference is that it's been suggested on the basis of the pressure that local authorities under across the board that we should be impacting the CJC in the same manner as we're impacting constituent authorities, and the recommendation is that there is a reduction of 10% on that budget. Now, as it happens, the 10% can be funded at the moment from reserves, which means that we can still deliver on the expenditure side without actually cutting the service, which is what's happening in constituent authorities. And it still gives us a level of reserves which actually allows us to develop the CJC over the forthcoming period going forward, and gives us scope during the year of advancing on that over and above the said budget, if so desired. Consistent with last year, on the basis of the value of what's going into the planning function, it is effectively proposed within here that actually that the national parks don't make a contribution at the moment, and the actual levies all fall back on the individual authorities. As mentioned previously, there was scrutiny last week, and we have discussed that in terms of their views, in terms of some of the feedback, which has been useful feedback. This budget was actually, after it's set today, will also be presented to the Audit and Governance, because they've asked to see the budget, which is later this week, and will be presented on Thursday to that committee. So the proposal and recommendation is here that we actually continue with a continuity budget, that we implement a 10% reduction in the levies, and we take that from reserves. So just for clarification around the recommendation says that the budget requirement for the Joint Committee will be 615,049. That is correct, but it'll be 615,049 less the 59,071, which will be the contribution from reserves, giving a net position which is 555,978, which will need to be minuted accordingly. And that 55978 will be what is apportioned around to the individual authorities, the 4 constituent authorities, on a population basis, which will be the levy that they will have to incorporate within their budget before they conclude their budget process in February stroke into March. So that's the recommendation option, Appendix B, taking account of the 10% levy. Happy to take any questions, Chair, if there are any.
Thank you, Chris. Really helpful run through and clarification there. And as you say, I think important that we've now changed the descriptor as well, because it is a continuity budget. And as Darren made the very valid point, if you compare the progress we've made in terms of the CJC, both in terms of its setup and then getting into its clear work programme, we're further ahead than any other CJC in Wales at the moment, and that is clear in terms of progress we've made. But as you quite rightly point out, and others have pointed out, we'd like to do more quickly, but that will be dependent on funding arriving from Welsh Government and elsewhere. So, okay, Darren, did you want to come to you if you'd like to formally move the report?
Yeah, absolutely. More than happy to formally move option 2, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm more than happy to second. I'll open it up then. Are there any questions or comments for Chris? Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question to Mr. Moore, if I may. Given the letter which has come from scrutiny, I think members will know your answer to this, but would your position change in light of the letter from the Chair of Scrutiny?
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. No, my feeling would be the same, because we've got such a path to travel going forward, and there's development continuing. I feel that it's appropriate that we expand from there and this sets the stability for that budget without actually impinging too much pressure on the constituent authorities, because I'm also conscious of the constituent authorities' position. But the fact that they're seeing a 10% reduction in that levy, I think certainly helps them. But over a period in the future, especially when you consider it as a continuity budget, that 10% is going to have to be recovered depending on how the development of the 4 work streams develop. So, we've secured some significant extra funding on the regional transport plan, but we've still got a path to travel in terms of the economic development and the energy plan, etc. And I think the resources from the work streams will be required over the period of time. So it's better to have them in place than come back to the authority and say that we want to up the levy next year by a significant amount. I think the other thing to bear in mind is I think local authorities, by what I see are forward indicators, year 2 of their medium-term financial plan is going to be a lot more severe than year 1. And I think we'll have a more challenging debate next year, potentially, on what we feel that local authorities will be able to manage. So I would have said this is a reasonable position at this point in time. But I'd certainly appreciate the question, and more to the point, probably I would have been able to, if I'd been in the meeting last week, I could have expanded a bit further on some of those points, actually, which may have been helpful.
Okay, thank you, Chris. So I think we're clear that Chris's advice doesn't change. I don't think the leader's position in terms of their position on the budget has changed either, but we have considered and heard the points from scrutiny as part of our decision making today. So, okay, so report is moved and seconded. Could I ask those colleagues who are in favour to show, please? Okay, thank you very much. That is carried. And that takes us then to our final item, which is urgent items. I do not believe we've had any submitted for today. So with that, I will draw the meeting to a close. Can I thank you all again for your attendance and contributions, and look forward to seeing you next time. Okay, thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you very much.